it is such a thrill to welcome actor, director, producer, businesswoman, humanitarian, and author Drew Barrymore to Sixth and I. I've learned that everyone has a favorite Drew Barrymore moment, and everyone wants to tell you about it. When I told my family that I was hosting Drew, my husband immediately went into raptures about the time that she runs out onto the baseball field in fever pitch. And my son was in hysterics, reenacting the scene in Blended where she carries her young son up the stairs after he falls asleep and hits his head all the way up. I don't know why my son would think that was funny, but... I personally love the scene in Ever After where she hoists Prince Charming onto her back and carries him to safety. I guess Drew physically carrying men is a favorite of both me and my son. But it is undeniable. Audiences feel connected to Drew. In her body of work and in her public life, Drew has always shown us the power of imperfection, the crucial nature of mistakes and failures and growth, and the desperate importance of loving the process. This insistence on emotional honesty guides her new memoir, Wildflower. It's quite unique as a Hollywood memoir. It doesn't try to dazzle you with glamorous parties that you would never be invited to. Instead, it invites you in to Drew's innermost thoughts and feelings as a mom, a wife, a daughter and a daughter-in-law, a friend and a traveler, and it reveals her to be every bit as loving, funny, frazzled, and inspiring as we knew she would be. Drew has a wonderful partner in conversation tonight. Scott Simon is the Peabody and Emmy award-winning host of NPR's Edition Saturday and correspondent for CBS Sunday Morning. But Scott's work also includes profound depictions of his own family, as he tweeted and then wrote the best-selling memoir Unforgettable about his mother's decline from lung cancer. His belief in family, honesty, and an open conversation has many parallels in Drew's work, and I'm very much looking forward to their conversation. Please help me welcome to the stage Scott Simon and Drew Barrymore.
It is turned on. Hi. Wait, am I on?
You wanted to read something, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi. Oh my God, there's a balcony and everything. That's so exciting. You can't see that when you're underneath. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I know that the power of your choice to spend your free time, if this is free time, wherever you choose to be, thank you for choosing to be here. That is so cool for all of us involved this evening. And, all right, so if I can start with reading you a preface. I called my editor and I was like, I just emailed you a draft of a foreword, love to know your thoughts. And she's like, it's called a preface. I was like, you learn something new every day. Preface. I wrote this book without assuming anyone would ever read it. And yet I wrote it for you, the person reading this right now. If it feels personal for you, then I am so happy because it was personal for me. I didn't write it in any particular format. This is not a sweeping life story, but an elaboration on times in my life as I remembered them. I asked myself from time to time over the course of exactly 1 year, what should I revisit? Or what stories should I tell? Because to me, these are stories. My publisher wanted to call this a memoir at first, but that didn't sound right. Memoir seemed heavy, and I wanted this to be light. This is a book you can dip into and read when you want, but I can only hope that every once in a while it catches you inconveniently feeling something. it was inconvenient writing it with 2 young daughters. They are my universe. And I felt terrible pulling myself away from them to write, ever. But every mother knows how this feels. However, I discovered over this year that being a mother is at times hardest in the transitions. Pulling yourself away, you feel like the devil. But once you do, then you can be more present. And the gift is that once you pull away from your responsibilities, you can fully be a parent. It is being present that matters most. And when I was writing and I shut my door, I would let the inspiration flow. For some reason, I had to write this book. I have become more private every year, and yet these stories were beating at the door of my heart, screaming, "Let me out!" Maybe it was because I have always dreamed of being a writer. Those people who do the typing and the transporting are my heroes. I have never been able to do that. I have never been brave enough, smart enough, had enough to say. I had not exercised those abilities in my life, and now I have, alone in a room, and yet, as I say in the book, you do nothing in this life alone. And most of all, you do not live alone. And therefore, we all have stories to tell. These are mine. If for anything, it sets up the tone that I didn't assume anyone would read the book, which is, just my humble way of thinking, oh my God, I can't believe anyone will ever read this.
I brought you a little gift from Halloween.
Thank you. You know, M&M's turned the movie down.
I'd heard that,
Back
yes.
in 1981.
Yeah.
As Julia Roberts says in Pretty Woman, big mistake.
Yeah.
Huge. I have to go to Reese's Pieces now. And funny enough, a woman I work with currently was a head honcho at Hershey back in 1981 and remembered the guy who said yes as a Reese's Pieces executive. Not a big mistake for him. Smart. Who knew that would ever, be a successful film, though?
Well, it was called something else at first, right?
It was in a chapter I write in the book called The School of E.T. The whole book is like a shuffled card deck, because you don't remember your life in a chronological order. You remember it, all over the place. And so I decided to shuffle the deck, and I was thinking about making E.T., and when I went to audition for it, actually I auditioned for Poltergeist, and Tobe Hooper, the director, wasn't there that day, thank God, because his producer, Steven Spielberg, was there that day, and I auditioned for him, and of course I was 6, and I just lied my ass off. I was like, I'm a drummer in a band, and I was much more precocious and flamboyant than I would ever be at this moment in my life. And he bought into my stories and said, well, you know what, you're not right for this movie. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. Inside I died. And he was like, but I'm making another movie, and I'd love for you to come audition for that. And I was thinking in my head, yeah, right, well, if you call, great. But you probably won't. So whatever, thanks, for the time. For a 6-year-old, you're just thrilled to have an audience. So, but he did call me back, and I did get to go audition for a film called This Boy's Life. I auditioned like 3 or 4 or 5 times, many times, and then the final audition was that I had to scream. Could I scream was the big question, and they had one of those really cool old audio, reel-to-reel recorders, and they started it, and I screamed, and it snapped, and the tape snapped. And I didn't know at that moment if that was a good thing or a bad thing.
You screamed so loud the tape snapped? I never heard of
screamed
that.
so loud the tape snapped. And then
Opera singers don't snap the
Well,
tape.
you don't want to hear me sing, but that would make the tape like vomit, burn alive, and then like fall over limp. But yeah, and I had these posters on my wall as a kid, like I had Kiss, and it scared me so much, those guys in that makeup, but I insisted on like facing the fear. And I had Superman, and he was like, you know, Superman, Christopher Reeves. And then I had Blondie, because she was just, I don't know, the embodiment of a woman to me. And then I had Pippi Longstocking. And she was everything a girl could be to me. A girl who told herself I could do anything. And so when I got the phone call that I got the film, I ran back into my room and like all the posters were talking to me. Kiss was like, yeah! And Superman was like, and Blondie was like, but Pippi was most proud because she was like, yeah, now you can go for the rest of your life and do whatever you want to do.
You're living in an apartment in West Hollywood with your mother.
I was a duplex.
Your mother was trying to make it in the business too, wasn't she?
She was. She was an actress, and actually during the time we made E.T. simultaneously, she was making a film called Night Shift with Michael Keaton and Henry Winkler and Shelley Long.
That's a pretty good film.
Excuse me?
A pretty good film.
I love that film.
Yeah.
By the way, back to your full circle, Ron Howard's first film.
Oh my gosh. All right, we were talking backstage.
Ron in the-
That's right, that was Ron Howard's
That's
first film.
right.
That's right, yeah.
And
okay.
Brian Grazer.
All right, okay. Well, so your mother was
I've
trying
been
to...
around so long, it's like if you just turn the dial at some point, you'll hit someone I know somehow.
I mean, a lot of people know the answer, but where was your father?
Gone, but that's okay. That's what he needed to do. And I somehow, as a young girl, I think he gave me the gift of total insight and calm understanding, as he was part violent storm, part unicorn. Like, he was fascinating to watch, but you were like, yeah, no, it's probably best you're not around on a daily basis. And you don't even like to wear shoes because you're that non-committal. So I get that you can't be a dad. And I weirdly had no baggage. The mom thing, different.
Yeah.
That's baggage. Any like mother and daughter who even has the most pristine relationship, we don't have enough room or time in life to discuss it. It's the most beautiful and sensitive, and you know, it can be full of guilt and tumultuousness. It's the most intricate relationship. I wonder what it's like for fathers and sons. I'm not on that spectrum, so I only know the girl side of it, but it's an intense one. It really is.
Well, when you...
I'm like, yeah, it is. But I'm like at real peace with it now, so it's very positive.
When you read the book, you get the impression that you found on the set of E.T., the people who played your brothers,
Yes.
and Steven Spielberg,
Yes.
a family that maybe, and I say this with respect to your parents, who in many ways did their best and made their best choices,
They really
you found a family.
I did. And on a film set, it's hard because like it ends and then you have to deal with that. But I always was very aware that things were transient and temporary. And although that wasn't my favorite feeling in the world, I think it gave me a lot of strength, and it gave me a lot of gratitude for the people who do stay, and how you have to work and cultivate your relationships like a beautiful garden, and flowers are quite sensitive in themselves, and you know, everybody needs nurturing, and you can't expect everything to stay. And people with like very stable families probably have their strengths from that, and then a series of things that they're going to be tripped up by and like have to work on. You know, it's all checks and balances. And another story I write in the book called Taurus, although my mom and I didn't have the most stable relationship, to put it politely, although she did take me to Studio 54, and that was such a frown upon moment, but God, it was so fun. You know, and although she was like, you know, could have been seen as some evil stage mother, she was really just trying to do her best. And she was a young mother living in West Hollywood. And, she gave me an incredible amount of opportunities because of putting me in auditions as a kid. And I look at it as my opportunity to have not screwed up, then not screw up again. And I'm most grateful to her. And it has also taught me about how you don't focus on what wasn't there or what wasn't the way you needed it to be, or, it's what did occur. It's glass half full. Okay, my dad wasn't around, but that's okay. Like, he was rad and interesting, and who did come along, who stayed. And funny enough, my mother is a Taurus, and I wrote a chapter called Taurus because there's a woman who did come into my life named Nancy Javonen, who I started my company, Flower Films, with when I was 19, and she is a Taurus. And when I had my daughter, Frankie, I was laying in the hospital room. My second daughter, she is a Taurus. And although I'm not one of these freaky astrological nut jobs that reads the horoscope and sits with psychics all day long, I definitely had a moment when my daughter was born, and I got looking back on it, not long later, trying to write these stories, I reflected on the circle of women, of these Taurian ladies that have come into my life, and it really does make me realize what kind of person I am and how important it is to me to focus on what was there. And Nancy Javonen was what was replaced, and she is the most extraordinary woman I've ever met in my life. She is the coolest, smartest, most together with it, the woman who was making the introduction, by the way. Amazing, the way you set this all up, thank you. So articulate. And I am frazzled, by the way. You'll read that in a chapter called Domestic Bliss. I made my husband throw up through my cooking, and it's this whole downhill rabbit hole. It's just, I think it reads as crazy as it was. Nan, we started a company, and she found every cool project we did. If you like a Donnie Darko or a Charlie's Angels or a Fever Pitch, as you mentioned, she's that woman. She is what I think is a female Brian Grazer, even though they have a different scope, and but they have an amazing partnership, and I've always looked up to her. And we had 20 years, and we're still working together, of amazing times and great successes together. And success to me is defined by employment. That to me,
that's a pretty good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was amazing. She gave me so much tough love, exactly kind of what you need from parents. I mean, she was hard on me. She was like, vote, don't drink and drive. You're late all the time. It's selfish. I hate it. I won't have it.
Now,
I was
you
like, okay.
you say in the book that's something your mother never could bring herself to say.
No, I think my mom was, not really a mom in that way. She was more of a friend dynamic and someone growing up herself. It was more of a partnership. It was too even. You want the older person kind of giving you that tough love and wisdom, and she just wasn't that for me, but it doesn't make her a bad person. That just was not our dynamic. But, friends have such an amazing ability, too, to hear each other differently. It's not like lovers where you're oversensitive about everything they say. You don't do what does that mean about hand me the coffee cup? Why do we do that to each other? It just meant hand me the coffee cup. Well, you said it very accusingly and confrontational. I mean, how do we get through a day? Friends, we don't do that. But when they really do hit you hard, it hurts so badly, but you can hear it differently. And I love her so much for being someone who was willing. And I think when a friend really lays down the law with you, and anyone, lover, friend, family member, instead of being offended or, getting into your ego, it's that person gives a shit. They care enough to tell you the truth, or to better you, or to take the time out of their own precious life to focus on you, for you to become a bigger and better person. Thank you. That's amazing. And maybe that is what parenting is. Yeah. And I've been very lucky to meet amazing people along the way, and I have latched myself onto them like Velcro. and just ridden
Yeah.
along for their ride and learned a lot from them.
I was very glad to read that when you finished E.T., Steven Spielberg wasn't done with you.
No, that didn't have to end, and he still is very much in my
Yeah.
life. I have dinner with him in 2 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
he
But you
sees
you
my
used to
kids.
hang out at his house on weekends after the film, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he really did. I think see a vacancy in my life and tried to fill it in whatever beautiful way that he could. And he was great. And he also was like, the lipstick, you're 12, too much. And I was like, oh God,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you. I kind of loved it. I really did.
But look, you were involved in a pretty celebrated court case when you were 14.
Yes, I got emancipated from my mother, but
Yeah.
with her consent.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty unusual.
Yeah, it is. I thought
Was
it was
it?
going to be so much fun at first. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm 14. I get to go live on my own. And we had been through a lot. I had, been away for a while. And to put it mildly, I was like,
That's code word, right?
yeah, that's code word for institution.
Yeah.
But you know what? Best thing that ever happened to me. My mom couldn't parent. Sometimes you need a military-style fucking boot camp. And they did. They put their foot right up there for about a year and a half. I went in 13 and someone who got to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. Too much at their fingertips. And I came out the most quiet, humble, never take anything for granted, mini adult that I could have ever been. And these people saved my life, and they single-handedly probably gave me 18 years worth of parenting in a year and a half. And so when I got out, they felt that my mom and I would be best apart. So I was like, well, I mean, it's what they're saying, so, let's just trust the experts. And my mother and I shook hands. It was very mature, as graceful as we could have been. Of course, it was incredibly painful, but I think it was one time we tried not to make it a guilt fest and went our separate ways. I got my first apartment, and I was so excited going into it. I finally had my freedom and a chance, when you have a midlife crisis at 13 because you went to work at 11 months old. Mathematically, that all times out. But I was like, God, I'm 14. This is so exciting. I'm going to have my own apartment. And then I was like, wow, being an actor doesn't prepare you for shit. I don't know how to do anything. Like throw away food. I would just put it back in the fridge and shut the door. And
Laundry was your breakthrough.
Laundry took me down.
Yeah.
My pile just grew and grew. I had nothing to wear. It had the Jaws theme every time I looked at it. And I was like, oh, God, I suck. And I was so overwhelmed by laundry. So I went to the laundromat. I got a laundry basket. I had to hoof it because I didn't have a car. And I went to the laundromat. And it was kind of with the stacked laundry mat, washer, dryer, they look exactly the same. I didn't know which was which. I stood there panic-stricken, and then I started looking at other people like I was cheating on a test. I was like, So needless to say, I put the bleach right on the clothes and the fabric softener in the dryer, the liquid fabric softener. And my clothes came out like disintegrated Dalmatians and gumball melted machines, and I was like, oh, God, okay. So I enlisted a friend, I got a tutorial, and I just said, you know what? I cannot let this take me down, and like everything in life, I'm not a quitter. I will figure this out, and I became a master launderer. I was like a sexy chef in there, boiling the pot and putting the bleach in as the water rose, and the fabric softener, everything came out like cheesecloth from 1967. It was so good. And I just thought, you know what? You just figure things out by romancing it and conquering it. And mastery will teach you to be less afraid when you are daunted. And laundry did all that for me.
Looks beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah.
Dry cleaning is a whole other subject. Who has time for dry cleaning? And now that I have kids, it's like dry clean. I'm like, yeah, right. I'm taking this to the dry cleaner for my children. My 1-year-old will really appreciate that. No thanks.
We're going to get to your questions in a few minutes. I think if let me just tell the nice folks here, if they have any more to pass up, please bring them up when you can. But let me try a few more if I can. We were showing each other pictures of our young children
Yes,
backstage.
and your daughter just had a birthday.
Yes, our daughter. Our daughter, Paulina Luman Simon, just had her 9th birthday yesterday.
We didn't even talk about the fact that we both have 2 girls, yet we were showing each other our pictures and having 2
Halloween
girls
costumes, and yeah.
That's right.
Well, it raises the question. You have, as I, by the way, do too, notably beautiful, winsome, appealing, and I'm sure brilliant daughters.
Oh, God, thank you.
How would you feel if a director said, you know, I think they might be perfect for something? Would you bring them in?
I would say when they're 18, I would love it. And if you try to tap them before that, I will kill you. I'm the opposite of my mother. But I, again, wouldn't be here unless my mother had given me these opportunities. And I'm always shocked when people, I mean, I'm not shocked because people are cynical people sometimes, but they're like, would you ever let your kids act? I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Crap on my whole life as if it's a terrible thing and think that the profession of acting is some horrible thing I would never want to let my own children touch, let alone be in? No. I think it's a wonderful profession full of unlimited opportunities, and I love my life more than anything. I think film really saved me when I was a teenager, and I started my own company and got to be a producer and have incredible opportunities for 20 years with my partner and make all different types of films. So I love film, and I will never poo-poo it. However, I would love my children to be children. And I think that's the difference. You know, I would support anything they wanted to do as long as it's healthy, including being actors. I just want them to do it when they're older. So I know it's actually their decision and not mine.
But wasn't it your decision?
What?
To
Act?
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it.
Yeah.
I actually was mad when people spoke ill of my mother's choices, because I knew that had my life not taken every turn that it did, I wouldn't be who I am today. And, you know, those had to be from some of her choices. It would be crazy of me to be like, yeah, I'm completely self-made. I went to work at 11 months old. I don't think I was driving myself to that Gainsburger Puppy Chow audition. You know, so, you know, like I said, it's up to you to screw things up or make them your greatest opportunities.
Yeah. What do you think?
I don't think I drove myself to that audition. Anyway.
Nowadays there's Uber, so although you got to be careful. What do you think the difference is between you and Ron Howard and, I don't know, 50 other names that we could probably mention of people who were big child stars and are now considered to be hard luck stories?
Considered to be what?
Hard luck stories.
Oh, well, he's a good luck story.
Yeah, no, what's the difference between you and Ron Howard and
Oh,
the
Ron
50
and I are
other-
on the good spectrum. Phew. I'm like, oh, shoot.
Sorry. I must have been imprecise. Yeah.
And I was about
You
to
and-
be like, I think Ron's doing really well.
Yeah, I saw the hardware in his place. Yeah, I assumed it was a joke shops thing. I didn't know.
No,
but,
now I got you. And thank you, by the way,
Yeah.
to put me in his company. Holy cow.
Well, I'm not sure anybody's in Ron Howard's company,
I
but
was just going to say, I'm
but
he's-
okay, but you're not only professionally successful, you're nice people.
Thank you.
You're good
He
parents.
seems like the nicest man on the planet.
Yeah.
He is the nicest. I've spoken to him several times. He's the loveliest, and I'm crazy about his daughter. That's a success story. His
There-
daughter's incredible, and she's the nicest woman, and I cannot take my eyes off of her on
Yeah.
screen. I think she is
Yeah.
so dynamic. I mean, just breathtaking. So look, there's a perfect example of Hollywood brings up another,
Yeah.
generation in their own family. I think that's the epitome of a success story with them. I have no idea what the difference is. I'm always like weirded out too when people are like, what do you have to say to those? I'm like, as if they want to hear it from me. I didn't want to hear it from people. Like, you know, you got to figure your own stuff out, and you don't want to be patronized publicly, you know. So I have no idea. I do imagine that Ron Howard is someone who is incredibly hardworking. And I know that for my partner, Nan and I, who looked up very much to Imagine Films, and then when we started our little company, Flower Films, we really looked up to them as sort of a marker. They are total class, and they're very prolific. And I think, you know, Nan always said, she always had the best sayings, too. You know, she was always slow and steady wins the race kind of person, and, you know, I'd freak out when we were making Charlie's Angels, and, like, early press was like, this is stupid, you know, a movie from an old TV show, ugh. And I was like, oh, God, this is, like, 2 years of our lives, and, like, it's negative. And she was like, you keep your head down and you do the work. That's what matters. And if it's good, no one will say anything, and if it's bad, well, then they have every right to say it. But they can't judge it on, like, imagination. It has to come out, and then they have to judge it from there. You keep your head down and do the work. And I was like, oh, it's so logical and rational. Oh, you're so pragmatic. I'm so, like, emotional idiot quivering in the corner, and she always had the answers. And she's right. You do the work. You don't expect things to happen. You behave in a certain way. I got called out for silly behavior, and you know, I think you're not called out when you behave gracefully. You're kind of under the radar, and that's actually where I like to live. But you do your best, and as a mother, everything has really changed for me. And there's actually I write this chapter called Postpartum Me, and the spell check person who's called me, and they're like, it's actually postpartum. And I was like, no, I mean to say that, like postpartum me. And because when I became a mother, just, you know, to balance everything, and I've really put my kids first and pulled back on work because I want to be there. I want to be the kind of mother who's there every day with my kids. And I started to get this queasy feeling of, you know, constantly as a mother, it's always like a hamster wheel from hell that you can never get off of. You know, you're just like, am I doing everything right? I just love them more than anything than I've ever loved anything. And oh God, like it's never, even when you're sleeping. So, you know, you try to talk yourself off the crazy ledge every once in a while. And every once in a while, you'll find something that comes along the way that does it for you. And I found this Simpsons episode at the height of my insanity of how do I be the best mother that I could ever be on planet Earth in the universe, because those are my expectation levels on myself for everything. So you can imagine motherhood is like just out of the stratosphere. The universe is expanding, and I'm beyond it, going like, gotta be better as a mother. And I saw this Simpsons episode. It's called And Maggie Makes Three, and Homer Simpson, in a nutshell, wants to quit the power plant, and he comes to, it starts with them looking through the photo album, and Bart and Lisa are like looking through the photo album. They're like, there's no pictures of Maggie, why? And they're like, oh, well, that's a long story. And it turns out that Homer wanted to quit the power plant so that he could have his dream job of working in a bowling alley. And you see him working at his power plant, and it's just kind of hell on earth with Mr. Burns like, and he works in an octagonal office, and there's like an Orwellian plaque in front of him that says like, do your work and do it well. And he's just miserable. And Marge like enables him to do his dream. He goes to work at the bowling alley. I think his hair starts to grow back, like life is good. And Bart and Lisa are happy, they're in school, they're economically able to pull it all off until Marge gets pregnant again with Maggie. And so Homer has to sacrifice. He has to go back to work at the power plant to make ends meet to have a third child. And they said, yeah, but that still doesn't explain why there are no pictures of Maggie in the book. And he goes, oh, well, that's because I put them where I need them the most. And you go back to his office, and that Orwellian plaque that he's looking at has all these pictures of Maggie taped up. And because of where they're placed, it's rearranged the letters to say, do it for her.
Oh.
And I was like, thank you, Homer Simpson. Do it for her. And that was a great lesson as a mother.
I think I have one question I'm going to save to the end. Let's get to some audience questions, okay? Lightning round. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
You're not going to listen to me, so just do what you're going to do. I'll see you at 40.
Very good. What do you regret saying no to the most? I assume that's meant professionally, but...
No, I mean, we all have a rearview mirror that's not totally unlike that hamster wheel. That's metaphorical, and we're looking in it, wondering if we went this way, were we actually supposed to go that way? I definitely beat myself up about certain choices, but I will say that every single time I look at my kids, I know everything went perfectly. So, because the way they're, just there, and I'm like, oh God, yes, why do I even worry about anything?
Yeah.
Because there they are.
It's a great answer.
Oh, good.
And I don't say that to everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, Drew. If your life were a movie, what song would play during the opening credits?
Oh, Good Vibrations by Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Kind of a, it's positive and kind of gets your hips going.
A question that's Talmudic, appropriately. Why do you think we are all here tonight?
I would never assume to know, but I'm so glad we are.
Also Talmudic. We've touched on this, but maybe you can wrap it up for us. How has motherhood changed you?
For the best.
Yeah. Makes you add up your life differently?
I really marvel at these kids and my opportunity, and just that I get to have this beautiful gift, and I really do want to be present for it. And in a world where nobody can agree on everything, everyone agrees on how fast it goes by. So if you don't listen to that wisdom of every person coming up to you and saying it goes by fast, it's like the Sausages dog, like popping up, it goes fast. Like everyone all day long, that's all they tell you about, having kids. So it's like you would be a moron not to listen to that. So I'm just really in it and just trying to be witness and help guide and nurture along, and remember it's their journey when I need to, and back off, and then be there to help, with each step when I need to, and knowing that is a whole circus in itself, but this is awesome and this is it. And I never wanted to screw this up. I would have tried everything in life. Everything was a trial, and you only live once. Kids, very different. I would have never had them had I not thought that I would be at the best, most selfless, valiant, warrior-like place for my kids. So they bring out my best, and I mean, man, it's challenging. 1.5 and 3, anybody been there? It's like, it's crazy. It's beautiful chaos. But this is the best thing I've ever done with my life, and in so many ways I feel like I was born the day my kids were, and that everything in my life was like some type of experimental dream to gain education and insight of how to apply it for them.
This doesn't follow exactly, but how do you explain your special chemistry with Adam Sandler?
I love Adam so much, and I wrote a chapter. A lot of this book,
Yeah.
I believe, is a love letter. As I started writing it, it's not about lovers and salacious, or as someone eloquently said at the beginning, Hollywood parties. It's about the in-between moments that I found shockingly formative and humorous, and made me cry while I was writing it. And it was so such an amazing journey to write this book, and I didn't have such a predisposed notion of what it would be. I just wanted to write with my heart, and I had an index and some ideas. But it really, in turn, started becoming this love letter to my daughters and people I love along the way. And one of those people is Adam. I mean, he has just been a really special partner to me.
You've done 3 films together?
We've done 3 films together, and we were kids when we started. And, you know, I asked him if he would go and meet me at a coffee house, and we showed up, and we looked like the worst blind date you've ever seen. You know, he was in his traditional giant cargo shorts and baggy t-shirt and, like, baseball hat, and I was, like, in pink platforms, leopard coat, and purple hair. This was so not a match, aesthetically speaking. And yet I was like, listen, see past this. Hair and makeup and wardrobe can do wonders on us, but I believe in your light. I believe in it so much, and I'm not here to try and date you. I really believe that we are supposed to have some type of cinematic, soulful, Desi and Lucy-like kind of, you know, partnership. And I know that may sound crazy, but I just think that what you're doing and putting out into the world is so very special, and I really appreciate it, and I want to get in there with you. So we talked a lot. We shared scripts with each other. We tried to find something, and one day he called me. He was like, I have this idea for this story. It's like about a guy who sings in wedding bands. And I was like, sounds promising. And we went to work on it. We really developed it, and, you know, we made it a balanced thing. We always tried to make our films balanced. I loved old-fashioned movies. I love old films. I was a host on Turner Classic Movies. I love old movies. And the thing that was great about old films is the romantic films, especially our comedies, they were always two-handers. They were very balanced. Men and women always had something going on with each other. It wasn't like guy and girl. It was like there was a great dynamic always going on. So I really wanted to have that with him, and we did it, and we made The Wedding Singer. We had the best time ever. And then years later, we got to make 50 First Dates. And again, it was a script Nan found. It was called 50 First Kisses. It was like this indie that took place in Seattle. And I chased it for years. I loved it so much. And then they were like, oh, it finally went over to Happy Madison. I was like, Happy Madison? That's Adam Sandler's company. Hold on, I better get to my typewriter and write. I'm not kidding, I did. I wrote on a typewriter. And we had talked about reteaming for years, and I was like, this is the one, I know it! And he came over, we were on the Sony's lot, we were making Charlie's Angels, his office was on the Sony lot, I still sent it carrier pigeon because I'm old-fashioned, and every minute was like an hour. I was like, oh God, I love this project so much. And he came over and he was like, Barrymore, and I was like, yes. And he was like, you like this movie? And I was like, yes, I do. I really believe in it. It's wonderful. And I know this is what you and I are supposed to do together. And he was like, well, we want to make it into a comedy. I was like, that's fine. That's actually brilliant, but it can't lose the heart. And he was like, I know what guys want. And I was like, I know what girls want. And he was like, well, then maybe you should just produce it with me. And I was like, well, maybe I should. And he was like, well, then maybe you should just be in it with me. And I was like, that's what I've been trying to say. And so we went off to Hawaii and made 50 First Dates. Then we went to Africa and made Blended as adults and had 2 girls. We both have 2 girls. And it was fun writing a love letter to him and about him, because I promise you that I once knew a boy named Adam, and I now know a man named Adam, and he is everything that you could ever want him to be and more.
There's a 17-year-old girl here tonight. I won't embarrass her, but she asks, what would you say to young women who struggle with self-confidence? I bet it's not too hard to find the 17-year-old woman, come to think of it.
I mean, it goes back to the thing I said earlier about how you have to really work on things. You have to weirdly work really hard to be really light about things. And if you work really hard and you're really diligent to keep those little voices out of your head and be more smart and powerful than those stupid little voices, then you can put them out and go be your free self and admire people like, I'm sorry, I know it sounds crazy, but like Pippi Longstocking. When I was like 5 and I saw this girl like doing anything she wanted or everything she could with no negativity or hate towards men or, you know, nothing sort of bad girl about her. It was like you have to find people and things that make you feel like there is no ceiling to what you can do and who you can be and what you can look like. And all of that has to be based in, you know, the casing of your own little Tupperware shell, and this is who we are, and this is what we work with, but there are just no limits. And you just become so much smarter than your insecurities that you can just kick their little ass every time they come crawling up like spiders on you. And, you know, you just have a sense of humor about yourself and things, and no one can do it for you. That's the work. You have to do it for yourself. But I've always surrounded myself in people who made me feel like I could do anything that I put my mind and myself to. And those are my favorite people because we're all kids and dreamers. And if you're with dream makers, then you get to make your dreams. And that's the key, I think.
Yeah. I wasn't...
I have no idea, also, is my other answer.
I want to ask you about the last line of the book.
Okay.
Which I wasn't expecting. Last line of the book, I don't give any of the story development away. I've read through to the acknowledgments. Last line of the book is you have an acknowledgement for your father.
Yes.
And you say, see you again someday. Can you tell us what made you write that?
Well, if I've talked about there are no limits in life, then there should be no limits in the afterlife. I'd like to have a drink with him someday, somewhere in the celestial planes, if that's where it takes place. I wrote a story about him in the book called Joshua Tree, which was one of the most meaningful for me to write. And, you know, at the end of the chapter, I talk about you just don't really know what the rules are. After he had passed away, and I had a moment where a door opened in a room, and you know, you just go, who knows? Maybe it was him for a minute. And I think that I like the idea that everything is possible, that empowerment and that lack of line in the sand in life.
I guess what I liked so much about the line was it wasn't, we have a lot to talk about in the sense. It was just, I want to see you, I want to be with you.
And it's a light, you know, it's light. It's like, instead of like, oh, Dad, I've got so many issues. Where were you all my life? I'm like, totally get it. I'll see you on the flip side.
We, of course, want to leave time for people to buy books and have Drew Barrymore sign them. Thank you very much, Drew Barrymore, for being with us.
Thank you so much for coming. And thank you.